My wife hid the truth about our son the whole time. Now it was exposed and I got divorced. I'm 29 now, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee that's gone cold, trying to make sense of how my life turned upside down. The framed photos on my wall tell a story that's both true and false. Moments of joy captured in time, but tainted by lies I never saw coming. My darkest moment wasn't the divorce itself, though that cut deep enough. It was the day I discovered that my son, the child I had loved and raised from his first breath, wasn't biologically mine. The truth hit like a sledgehammer to the chest, leaving me gasping for air in a world that suddenly made no sense. Looking back at our marriage now, I can see the cracks that I was too blind to notice. Sarah was 27 when everything fell apart, beautiful and charismatic in a way that made everyone gravitate toward her. We moved in together after 6 months, got engaged in a year, and married 6 months after that. Everyone said we were rushing things, but when you're in love, you feel invincible. I remember the way she used to laugh at my jokes, how she'd curl up against me during movie nights, how she'd leave little notes in my lunch bag. All of it feels hollow now, like watching scenes from someone else's life. My childhood set the stage for everything that would follow, though I didn't realize it at the time. In our family, my brother Michael was always the star, the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the afterthought, the extra, the one who learned early on that approval had to be earned, and even then might not come. I can still picture those family dinners. Michael announcing his latest achievement while our parents beamed, me picking at my food and trying to become invisible. Every holiday became another exercise in favoritism. Michael getting the expensive gifts while I received practical necessities. When he crashed his first car, our parents bought him a new one. When I needed help with college tuition, I was told to figure it out myself. I made a promise to myself that I would build my own life, one where I didn't need their approval or support. The unequal treatment eventually drove me from home. I worked 2 jobs through college, took out loans I'm still paying off, and shared a cramped apartment with 3 other guys. My roommate became more of a brother to me than Michael ever was. Finally, I was free to build my own path. Then last year, Michael reached out. He was 27, supposedly more mature, claiming he wanted to heal our fractured family. "Mom and Dad miss you," he said over the phone, his voice carrying that familiar note of easy charm. "They talk about you all the time. We all made mistakes, but we're family. Doesn't that count for something?" I almost hung up on him right then, but Sarah was there, listening to my side of the conversation, her eyes full of hope. Despite my hesitation, Sarah encouraged me to give them another chance. "Family is precious," she said, squeezing my hand. "Sometimes people need time to grow. Look how far you've come. Maybe they have too." The initial reunion dinner was awkward but hopeful. My parents seemed genuinely interested in my life, asking questions about my work and marriage. Mom even brought out old photo albums, reminiscing about moments I'd almost forgotten. When I introduced them to Sarah, they welcomed her warmly, especially Michael. Looking back, I should have noticed how his eyes lingered on her, how she seemed to light up in his presence. He began visiting more frequently after that, usually dropping by unannounced. I thought nothing of it when he and Sarah developed what seemed like a friendly rapport. They shared similar tastes in music and books, often chatting while I worked on house projects. When Sarah announced she was pregnant, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. My family was healing, and I was about to become a father. The truth unraveled. I came home early from work, fighting a migraine, and found them in our kitchen. They were standing too close, sharing a kiss that destroyed my world in seconds. Sarah's face when she saw me. I'll never forget that mix of shock, guilt, and something else. No remorse. Calculation. "It's not what you think," she said, but of course it was exactly what I thought. Michael just stood there, silent, with that same smug expression he'd worn all our lives when he got something he wanted. I turned and walked out, got in my car, and drove until I ran out of gas somewhere 3 towns over. The divorce that followed was brutal. Sarah crafted a narrative that painted me as emotionally distant and controlling. She even hinted at emotional abuse, describing how I'd isolated her from friends and family. None of it was true, but truth matters less than perception in family court. Somehow, my parents sided with her version of events. She won full custody, and I was relegated to weekend visits, dutifully paying alimony to support what I still believed was my child. I threw myself into being the best weekend dad I could be. I'd pick up my little son every Saturday morning. We'd go to the park, visit the zoo, read stories, and build blanket forts. He was such a bright, curious child, always asking questions about everything. I lived for those weekends, even though dropping him off on Sunday evenings felt like having my heart ripped out every time. The final revelation came during what should have been a routine visitation. The house seemed empty when I arrived, but I heard voices upstairs, Michael and Sarah discussing their plans, laughing about how I'd never noticed their affair. Then came the words that stopped my heart. He still has no idea the kid isn't his. I stood there, frozen, as they continued talking. They discussed how they'd been together since before the pregnancy, how they'd planned to tell me eventually, but the timing never seemed right. Michael joked about how I'd never noticed that. They talked about asking for more alimony, about how naive I was, about how everything had worked out perfectly for them. The DNA test results felt almost devastating to me after that. 0% probability of paternity. Clinical words confirming what I'd heard from their own lips. But the real betrayal came when I confronted my parents. They admitted they'd known all along. Known through the pregnancy, through the divorce, through every moment they watched me pour my heart and resources into raising him. "We thought it would be better for everyone if you didn't know," my mother said, her voice gentle, as if soothing a child. "The boy needs stability. You've always been so good with him. And Michael, well, he wasn't ready to be a father then. It all worked out for the best, didn't it?" I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me, who had watched me suffer through the divorce, who had seen me fighting for every weekend with my son, and realized she had never truly seen me at all. I was still the afterthought, the one whose feelings didn't matter as long as Michael got what he wanted. The final straw came when Sarah showed up at my house, demanding higher alimony payments. "He's growing up," she said. "He needs more activities, better clothes. You can afford it. It's the least you can do for him." I stayed eerily calm as I presented the DNA test results and recordings of Michael admitting their deception. The color drained from her face as she realized her carefully constructed world was crumbling. "You don't understand," she started to say, but I cut her off. "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that you and Michael and my parents all conspired to lie to me. I understand that you let me believe he was mine, let me love him, bond with him, while you all laugh behind my back. I understand that none of you ever saw me as anything more than a convenient fool." I cut ties with all of them after that. My parents, Michael, the whole toxic system that had shaped my life. I refused to continue paying alimony, armed with evidence of their deception. My lawyer was confident we could not only end the payments, but potentially pursue fraud charges. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah brought my son to my door one evening, his small backpack stuffed with favorite toys and clothes. Her makeup was smeared, her hands shaking as she spoke. "He keeps asking for you," she said, her voice breaking. "He cries for you at night. Michael, he's not interested in being a father. He never was. I was so stupid, thinking he'd changed. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but he loves you. And I know you love him. Blood or not, you're his real father." I looked at my son, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, looking up at me with those trusting eyes. At that moment, I realized something profound. Biology didn't matter. This child, who I'd rocked to sleep countless times, who knew exactly how I did the voices in his favorite bedtime stories, who called me daddy with such pure love, he was my son in every way that mattered. And now, I'm here, learning to be a single father, navigating a relationship that defies conventional labels. Sarah and I have a civil relationship now, focused solely on my son's well-being. She's moved to a smaller apartment, taken a job at a local bookstore. Michael, last I heard, has moved to another state. My parents still try to reach out occasionally, but I maintain my distance. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Life rarely gives us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us something better, something we never knew we needed until it arrived. My journey continues, day by day, moment by moment, guided by the pure and simple love of a child who may not be mine by blood, but is mine by choice. Looking at him now, peaceful in sleep, I know I made the right decision. The price of love isn't measured in DNA or court orders or family obligations. It's measured in the quiet moments, in skin, knees kissed better, in bedtime stories and morning hugs, in choosing to love even when it hurts. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you choose fatherhood over blood? I did, and it's the best decision I've ever made. Because in the end, love isn't about who shares your DNA. It's about who shares your heart. Every morning when I wake up to the sound of little feet running down the hallway, every time I hear "Daddy, look at this," or receive one of those fierce little boy hugs, I'm reminded that sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you're born into. James may not have my eyes or my smile, but he has my heart, and that's what makes us father and son. We're building our own traditions now, creating our own definition of family. And maybe that's the silver lining in all of this. The freedom to choose love over obligation, truth over pretense, and the simple joy of being there for each other, no matter what life throws our way. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.